So welcome everyone. Welcome to those in Elsie Booktook. Welcome to those from Miramichi. Welcome to those from Rexton. And I will say welcome to those who aren't with us yet, but will be coming in as we get started. I'd like to introduce you to Sam and Alex from Ducks Unlimited. I think they're in Fredericton. Am I right today?
Well, no, we were actually delivering programs in St. John today, so we're in Grand Bay. We went to a place where we could find some internet so we could join you today.
Okay, right, Grand Bay, wonderful. So we'll get started if that's all right. Should I front load them with the Kahoot blurb that we will be asking you a little bit into the presentation if you have a device to have kahoot.it up and ready to go on your device or your teacher's device. So that is coming down the road. And
Pam, we have a limit. We can only have 20 participants in the Kahoot. So maybe classes just have 1 or 2 people per class running the controls.
Yeah. Perfect. We will probably not hit 20 then. Thank you. And Sam and Alex, you are free to start whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having us today. We are really glad to be here. And we're going to be going through a presentation on wetlands, why they're important, and the animals and plants and things that you can find there. And just before we get into that, I want to start with a little bit about Ducks Unlimited, who we are and what we do. And this is where I'd like to get some participation back from you guys. Have you guys heard of Ducks Unlimited before? Wave at me if you have. I see Ivan waving and he's the only one. Oh, Pam's waving too. Oh, I see a hand there on the side of the screen. So any guesses, just even based on our name, of what we do? Yeah, come right up ahead and talk. I see you have your hand up. Come talk to me. It's someone in Mrs. Gallagher's class. There we go.
Is it something about ducks?
It is absolutely something about ducks. What do you think it might be about ducks?
Science. Ducks in the water.
Yes, science. We have a research department that studies a lot of different things to do with wetlands and waterfowl, which would be your ducks. Anything else?
How they live?
Grow them.
Oh, we don't grow them. That'd be cool. I wish we did, but we don't.
Selling them?
No, we don't sell them either.
You study being kids with them?
All right. So we help ducks by protecting where they live. So we protect, we restore, we conserve wetlands and the associated habitats for the benefit of people, wildlife, the animals and plants that live there. And we do have a special focus on ducks because, hey, we're Ducks Unlimited. And we do this through a variety of on-the-ground habitat projects, research, and education programs. So people like Alex and I have the fun of running around talking to people about wetlands and why they're important and why we should protect them. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alex.
All right, well, hello, everyone. Before we jump into talking about wetlands, let's take a minute and look at a bigger picture. So the image in front of you is of our home planet, of course. And a lot of people know it as the blue planet. And that would be because over 70% of the surface of our planet is covered in water. Now, we see water everywhere we go. We see it in the clouds, lakes, rivers, oceans, pretty much everywhere we can think of. Heck, it comes out of our taps. So it'd be normal to think that water might not be that important of a resource. But when we look on a scale of the solar system, so all of the planets surrounding our sun, water is extremely, extremely rare. And most of it, even if we wanted to, is not accessible and we can't even drink it, what we have on our planet here. So the next slide, this is a breakdown of the water we have on our planet. Now, taking a closer look at our planet's supply, we can see that 97% of the water in this planet is seawater. It's salt water. So we can't even drink that. No animals can drink that. That's what makes up our oceans. Great to have, not super useful if you're thirsty. So let's look at the last 3% that we have at the top of the screen. Now, in that 3%, we have 2.5 of it, which is completely frozen, either in permafrost or in glaciers in the Arctic and the Antarctic. The only water that is accessible to us is that 0.5%. So only 0.5% of the entire Earth's water supply is available for us to drink. And that's mostly found in watersheds, glaciers, freshwater streams, reservoirs, and wetlands, of course. So not only do we have a blue planet, Canada we can look at as, that's a dog.
Here, I have to
We have a
remove
dog,
all
sorry.
of.
Yeah. We'll just wait till the dog's out of the way. Thank you, Sam. So not only do we have a blue planet, Canada can be called the blue country because we are home to about 25% of the world's wetlands, which are the blue areas you see here. So the darker blue is what percentage of the area is covered by wetlands. So all this dark blue is super, super, super wet areas. Your white areas, not much going on there, and then you can see the gradient going down. So not only is there a lot of water on the planet, we have a lot of the wetlands of the world. So it kind of normal to think, hey, why bother with all this water? Well, let's get to look at it a bit closer.
So just before we get into the importance of wetlands, I want to ask you guys, and let's back up so you just don't read me the definition, but what is a wetland? Anybody? Any ideas? Oh, I see you got your hand up again. Come on over.
Land, that's what it is. Land is dynamic and sloppy, gross.
Does it have something to do with like lakes, oceans, and all the water, like swamps and all that?
Swamps are a type of wetland, but lakes, rivers, streams, those guys are not wetlands. And I heard somebody else talking in the background, and they actually had the right answer.
Oh, it's a land that's wet.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It is land that is wet. It is land that is so completely wet, it saturates the soils and creates the basis for your wetland. Now, up on the screen in front of you, you're going to see a really scientific definition. This is the official definition of what is a wetland, but the easiest and all you need to remember is that it is land that is wet. And can you guys give me some examples of different types of wetlands? Somebody already said marsh.
Nope.
Does anybody have any others?
Swamp?
Yes, beautiful, swamp.
How do you spell that?
Marsh, yes.
Shallow open water.
Yes, someone is finally reading the slide. Awesome. Shallow open water. That is your ponds and vernal pools. What are the last two?
Ben.
Yes, fens and bogs. Good job. So this you're gonna see
sorry.
now is an example of your shallow open water. So that's going to be your pond, and this isn't actually a pond. Vernal pools are a little bit different. Vernal pools are your forested wetlands. So they're usually typically a little body of water in the forest. And this is a freshwater marsh. So freshwater marshes are also shallow water, but they tend to have a lot of plants growing along the surface, some vegetation coming up through. And we have two types of marshes in this province, and actually all the Atlantic provinces. And it has to do with the water that you find in them. Does anybody know what that water is? Oh, I didn't hear that answer. You're too jumbled. Fresh water, yes. And what's the other one?
Saltwater?
Saltwater, yeah, beautiful. So this picture that's up is a saltwater marsh. And if I back it up, that is your freshwater marsh. So where would you typically find saltwater marshes?
I don't know.
Where do you normally find salt water?
Near the sea, ocean.
In the sea, in the ocean. So these are your coastal wetlands. These tend to be bordering the ocean, and they are usually affected by the tide, which is how they get their salt water. This is your swamp. So swamps are really... Oh, is someone talking to me?
No, you're good.
No, good, okay. So swamps are a type of wetland that are really easy for you guys to pick out because they have the trees that are going right up through the water. And then the last two, your fen and your bog. Oh, this is another swamp. So your fens and your bogs, the way to tell them apart is a little trickier, and it basically has to do with where they get their water. So fens actually have a water source. They'll have a spring or a brook or something feeding the water into the wetland, whereas bogs are completely self-contained. Bogs, they get their water from rain, from snowmelt, from runoff, and they're a completely self-contained unit. So do you guys have any questions on the different types of wetlands? So why do we care? Why are wetlands so important? And it has to do with wetland values. So let's go look at the importance of our wetlands. So the first is they provide habitat for many species of wildlife. They are very high in biodiversity. When you start comparing them to some of the most biodiverse habitats on the system, on the earth, which is your rainforests and coral reefs, when you compare them based on size, they are pretty comparable in their levels of biodiversity. They provide shelter, homes, they're nurseries, so a lot of animals go there to have their young, and they provide a lot of different food. And you also have aquatic macroinvertebrates. What does that mean? Any guesses from anyone?
Miss Gallagher's class has a volunteer. I can see somebody on the edge of his seat.
Small, super tiny bugs.
Tiny bugs?
Tiny bugs that live in the water. So aquatic just means in the water. Macro means very small. And what is an invertebrate?
Spine?
No spine. Awesome. Yeah, they do not have a spine. Does anybody have any idea what that bug is there on the screen?
Beetle.
Water bug?
All right, hang on, guys. We have everybody answering at the same time, and I can't hear. So let's do Mrs. Gallagher's class first. What do you guys think it is?
A green bug.
Grasshopper.
It could
Water
be
cricket.
it could be a bug that eats all the bad stuff.
Oh, is it?
It's an ostrich.
Is it a bug that sits? Is it a bug that sits on top of the water and just like bounces?
Okay, let's time out for a sec. So it's definitely not an ostrich. And it is green, so you could call it a green bug. It is not a water strider. I heard somebody else saying, is it one of those bugs that skates across the top of the water? It is not a water strider. Let's give Mrs. Noftel's class a chance. What do you guys think it is? I'm hearing beetle and stick bug. Nope, it's none of those. All right, let's give Mrs. Malay's class a turn.
Yeah. Is it a dragonfly larvae?
That is it, bang on. It is a baby dragonfly. So dragonflies actually start their life in the water in wetlands. And the bulk of their life cycle, have you guys learned about life cycles yet?
Yes.
Yes? All right, cool. So they spend the bulk of their life as babies in the wetland. They can spend up to 7 years in the nymph stage, so as a baby dragonfly. Then when they are ready to turn into the adult, they'll crawl up out of the wetland onto a stick, a blade of grass, just whatever they can find. And then they break open their shell. And what they do is really cool. Have you guys heard of metamorphosis before?
Yeah.
What is metamorphosis? Does anybody know?
Yes.
What is it? I see your hand. Tell me.
When me?
Someone in Mrs. Knopftail's class?
It is when something.
Oh, you're too quiet. Louder, please.
Like when it comes up and it changes with a butterfly.
Yeah, really bad.
Yeah, it's like what a butterfly does. So it's when you change form from one thing to another completely. And butterflies do it by wrapping themselves up into a cocoon. And then when they hatch out of their cocoon, they're the beautiful butterfly. Well, dragonfly nymphs and damselfly nymphs, they do the same thing, but they do it inside their body. So as they get closer and closer to becoming the dragonfly, they're going through a metamorphosis inside their body. Then they just break open that shell. They do it right along the edge of their back. The adult dragonfly climbs out and flies away. And they only live as the adult dragonfly for a few weeks, a very short amount of time. They'll lay eggs a few times, and that's it. So the bulk of their life is actually as the baby. And here we have another very interesting pond critter. The top is the baby, and the bottom is the adult. Does anyone have any idea what that is? A moth? Does anybody have any different guesses besides moth?
A pond critter.
A pond critter? That's a good answer. You're not wrong. It is.
Like a moth.
It does look very similar to a moth. It is actually not a moth. It is a caddisfly. And caddisfly larvae, the babies, are really cool. Do you see how he has that stick house? There's some rocks stuck on it. Do you see how he has that over his body?
Turtle.
He actually makes that himself or herself. They use anything they can find around the bottom of the wetland. So it could be bits of leaves, seeds, sticks, rocks, and they actually spin a silk, almost like a spider, and they use that silk to stick their house together, and then they climb inside, and they use that to hide in. They're kind of like the hermit crabs of the wetland world, only there's no shells for them to go find to use, so they build their own. And you guys need to Google this later, but there's some really cool companies across the country now and in the United States that actually take caddisflies as the eggs, put them in tanks with gold, emeralds, diamonds, whatever you want for fancy jewelry, metal. And then when they make the houses, they take that and turn it into jewelry. So you could wear caddisfly larva cases for earrings. And when the adults are ready to change, or when the babies are ready to change to adults, they climb out of their house, they break open their shell the same way as dragonflies, and the adult flies out and they don't need their little house any longer. Oh, and I think some people are trying to send me messages in the chat. Pam, can you keep an eye on the chat for me?
And yes, I thought I was sending them to everybody. Sorry, Sam.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, if there's anything in the chat that you need me to see, I can't open the chat at the same time I'm screen sharing, so just let me know
I will.
if there's anything there for me.
Okay.
So why? Why do we care about all these little bugs and things? Does anybody know? Why do we care? This is Knopftail's class. I just seen you guys on mute. Do you have any reasons of why we should care? Yeah, there's someone way in the back. Come tell me what you think. You might have to come up. If you're talking from the back, I can't hear you at all.
I'm stretching. So what did you say? They help reproduce?
They help reproduce? Well, there's a lot of reasons why we care about these little bugs. They are food, so that they reproduce is very important. A lot of animals eat these. Frogs, birds, ducks, all kinds of things eat the little aquatic invertebrates that live in the pond. They're very important food. And they're also important in themselves because you can actually use quite a few of them to tell us about water quality. Why do we care if we have good water or not?
So then whenever we drink it, we don't get sick.
That's exactly it. This goes back to what Alex was talking about and how here in Canada, we have 25% of the world's wetlands. So it's really important that we care that this water is clean and safe for us to drink. And these little guys help us to determine how clean the water is. So if you're seeing things like mayfly larvae and caddisfly larvae, the water has to be good quality. They cannot exist in poor water quality conditions. Now, if you're seeing a lot of things like on the right side of your screen, you'll see there's a rat-tailed maggot. If you're seeing a lot of rat-tailed maggots, leeches, and snails, and none of those guys that exist up in the higher water qualities, it's probably a good indication that you don't have very clean water. Oh, I think my screen froze. There we go.
Oh, there we go. All right, so I'm gonna jump back in.
Can I ask a question there about those?
Yeah, for
trees?
sure.
Yeah.
Is that drinkable water, the one that was on the left of my screen?
Yes. Yes. So all the way to the left is your clean potable water. Having said that, you should never drink water right from a brook, lake, or stream in this province because we have a parasite that causes what's locally known as beaver fever and can make you very ill. You should boil at least for a minute any water that's not been tested.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So another reasons that wetlands are very important is that they are homes to many species at risk. Now, before I go on to the next slide, when you think of species at risk, what animals or species are you thinking of? Give me a few examples, guys. I can't hear anybody, so let's go with Mrs. Noftel's class first. Okay, we got a bald eagle. That's really good. Anything else? I didn't hear that one. Miss Gallagher's class?
Fish, because
Ostrich.
they're in the water.
Polar bear.
Okay,
Polar bear.
I heard polar bear. I heard ostrich, which actually in this case isn't as wrong as last time. That's good.
Whales.
Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the next slide. So this is a Google search that we've pulled up from when we type up species at risk. So as we can see, when people think of them, oftentimes what comes to mind are, like you guys said, ostriches, polar bears, your big cats, some monkeys. So some people think species at risk and they think, oh, it's exotic. It's not something in Canada. It's not something we have to think about. When actually we have a lot in our backyard that are becoming endangered or even worse, are facing extinction. So when we talk about species at risk or an endangered species or whatnot, this is basically how they're classified. So if we look all the way up at extinct, it means a wildlife species that no longer exists. So somebody, if we were to think of an extinct species, one that comes to mind for me is the dodo or the ivory-billed woodpecker. Species that we have records of that we know have existed, but have been lost and are no longer around. Again, if you guys think of dinosaurs, dinosaurs are all gone extinct. Now, extirpated. So an extirpated species would be something that still exists, but no longer in its native habitat or environment. Does anybody have any examples of an extirpated species they can think of?
Carrie?
White.
Sorry?
Great white.
The great
I can't hear you, sorry.
Great white.
Great white sharks?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so great white sharks I don't know. I think they may be endangered, but they're not extirpated. So they are still quite prevalent. Off the coast of Australia, off in the Pacific, there's a lot of great whites. And actually, I don't know if you guys know this, but in the Bay of Fundy, some great whites go there to nurse their young. So they have caught great whites and they've tagged great whites before, just in the Bay of Fundy here.
And they actually had a female that they were tracking off the coast of Nova Scotia this summer.
So next time you guys go for a swim, watch for fins. Now let's keep going. So an endangered species would be something that's facing an imminent threat. So they're just on the verge of becoming extirpated or extinct, right? So we have an endangered species list, which would be the list of species we want to make sure do not become any more endangered than they already are, because there's so few of them left. And then as we go down, we have threatened, which is basically something that is likely to become endangered if nothing is done to reverse their factors. And then we have species of special concerns, which we've singled out as being, okay, we've got to keep an eye on these guys, but they're not as an immediate danger as a threatened, endangered, extirpated, or extinct species.
Just before Alex moves on, to give you an idea of some extirpated species, if you look at the province of New Brunswick, if you look back around the 1900s, early 1900s, can anybody think of any species that we would have had here then that we don't have now?
The pine marten disappeared from Albert County back then, but we got it back.
Yeah, we do have pine marten back in the province. I'm thinking of wolves and caribou.
Yeah.
We used to have a very healthy population of caribou and wolves. Both were pushed out of the province. Wolves were hunted to the point that they were extirpated. The last caribou sighting in this province, I do believe, was in the 1930s. And what happened with the caribou was a combination of hunting and interaction with white-tailed deer. So white-tailed deer carry a parasite called brainworm, which is fatal to moose and caribou. So around that same time as the caribou were kind of on their way out, coyote and white-tailed deer were moving into the province.
So here are a few species of endangered or extirpated species that we have in the province. Now, going from left to right, we have the Bathurst aster, and I grew up in Bathurst, so the Bathurst aster and the maritime ringlet, and even the wood turtle are of special significance to me. So the Bathurst aster is a small salt marsh plant, that's a tongue twister, that's only found in a few areas around Bathurst on the East Coast. It's very geographically concentrated in Bathurst, and it hasn't been found in other areas in the region. So super rare plant, and just highlights the importance why we have to, well, stop destroying our wetlands. Moving on to the maritime ringlet. Now, I worked a few years at the Daly Point Nature Reserve in Bathurst, which is one of the few sites in the province where we're studying the maritime ringlet. And the reason this one is so easily endangered is that he only lives in salt marshes. As a subspecies of the common ringlet, they're very hard to tell apart. The only way really is the males are a bit darker colored, and is this eye spot here. All the ringlets have this eye spot, and not all common ringlets do. And the maritime ringlet, he does not migrate. He's not like the monarch. The butterflies will lay their eggs right before winter. And what we've seen happen is that when we have winters with not a lot of snow, it doesn't actually give enough of a thermal layer for the eggs and the larvae to stop them from freezing. So the more snow we have for these butterflies, the better it is. And as a food source, they usually feed on milkwort, lavender, goldenrod, and some of the asters that I've mentioned before. Moving on to the American eel, these guys, they kind of come up here once in a while, but they migrate down to the Sargasso Sea off the coast of the United States, which is where they go to breed. And traditionally, I believe that these have been very important for the Mi'kmaq and other indigenous people in the area. Correct me on that if I'm wrong. And our last two on the screen is we have the little brown bat and we have the wood turtle. Now, the little brown bat, as some of you may know, their population numbers have been plummeting recently. And it's due to a fungus that causes a syndrome called the white nose syndrome. So if you guys see a small dead bat, it's probably going to have a little bit of white on the nose. And the reason they're dying from it is that this fungus makes the bat change its instincts. So he's going to come out of hibernation earlier than he would. So what happens, it's not the fungus that kills them per se, but making them come out early out of hibernation means that they're way more susceptible to cold and way more susceptible to starving because their food's not ready yet when they come out.
And what is their food? What do bats eat?
Well,
Oh, say that again. I couldn't quite hear you.
Mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes. Yes,
Yes.
you got it. Bang on.
So, so even though bats might not necessarily live in a salt marsh, they do definitely depend on them for their food source. So you guys can think that if salt marshes and other wetlands were all filled in, mosquitoes, insects, and invertebrates would have no more places to raise their young and to birth their young. And so that's a huge food source for the bat that just gets wiped off. And now the last one here is the wood turtle. Now, these guys are endangered, and one of the biggest, or threatened, I should say. The biggest challenge with these guys is basically the geography of where they like to live. They spend a lot of their time on the land, but they need to go back to the river or riverbeds to lay their eggs and to mate. But they spend most of their day out in fields, close around forests, not too far away from a stream. And they're really cool though. So if you see one in the wild, try to stay away from it and notice what he does to hunt. So this guy is going to find a nice patch of grass and he's going to start tapping his feet on the ground. Does anybody have any idea why he's doing that?
to find bugs to eat.
Exactly. So he's feeling out the ground for bugs and he's making vibrations on the soil to mimic raindrops to get the bugs and the worms that come out. And that's how he hunts. And the reason he's threatened is because a lot of his habitat has been made very hard for him to cross, either because of roads, of farms, sometimes ditches just along the road. They're all places that turtles have a very hard time getting across, and it's had a very drastic impact on their population numbers. Sorry?
Because they're small.
I think you're saying predators. Is that right?
Small.
Because they're small.
He said because they're small.
Oh, because they're small.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another factor too.
Yeah.
So another reason why wetlands are important, it's a resting place for migratory birds. So as you know, in the winter, birds like to migrate down south. Lucky them. It's nice and warm. They obviously don't do the trip all in one go, though. They like to stop along the way to rest up and feed. Now, which one of these flyways would we fall under, do you guys think?
What are we?
You tell me. Where are we?
Yeah. So
We're the Atlantic
we're
flyway.
on the Atlantic flyway down here. And number 3, wetlands filter water. So in wetlands, if you look at the top image here, the water is often not moving very much. That we call it stagnant water, which means there's no current, it's not being agitated. And what that allows to happen is that the sediment or all the particles that are in the water will actually have the time to sink down and stay at the bottom of the marsh or whichever wetland they're in. And so when the marsh or the wetland, I'm just using marsh here by example because they're one of the main filtering wetlands. When the water in the wetland is filtered and it goes back into the watershed, meaning supplies drinking water back in the stream, it's a lot cleaner than it was when it came into the wetland, which is a huge reason why they're important. And the sediment and all the junk, quote unquote, if you will, that is get filtered out by the wetland, it's taken care of a lot of times by the plant and the bacteria that live in the marsh. So it's not like there's just a bunch of trash lying around at the bottom of the wetland. It's very clean. And the things that are filtered out is actually the food for the plants and the animals, the bacteria that live in the wetlands. So it's a pretty good system they have going on. And lastly, or not lastly, second to last, wetlands help to prevent flooding. How do you guys think a wetland can help prevent flooding if it's already full of water?
No, you probably did. Oh, because they're like deep, I guess. They're like.
What was that? I can't, one person at a time, I can't hear you guys. We'll have somebody from Ms. Gallagher's class first.
Oh no, because they're deep.
It slows down the water.
It slows it down. Okay, we're getting there, we're getting there. Somebody from Ms. Knopfel.
The giant holes in the ground.
Sponge, who said sponge?
In the back. Jacob in the back.
All right, yes, that is exactly what it is. Good job for reading the slides. So, marshes that are inland are acting as sponges. So, when rainwater comes over them, wetlands are extremely porous. So, porous just meaning that they have pores, there's a lot of air pockets in the soil and in the vegetation. So, if we look at the pictures here, this image has been blown up 25 times just to show you guys what the vegetation is made out of. It's made of something called peat. And peat is composed of something called sphagnum moss. And this moss is incredible because it just loves water. So when we have a wetland that looks very, very grassy, like this, it has a huge capacity to absorb water.
And this type of wetland is a bog.
Yes. And sphagnum can absorb 25 times its weight in water, which in terms of absorbency is pretty unbeatable.
And that's what that picture is showing you. It's showing a piece of sphagnum that has all the water inside it, that nice lush green one, and then one that's kind of been wrung out beside. So you can kind of see how much skinnier it looks when it doesn't have water inside it.
So your inland wetlands are super important to help prevent flooding in your communities, right? So if anybody of you guys live in a coastal community, I grew up in Bathurst. And when there's a big storm with a lot of rainwater, a lot of people got flooded in. But if you have a marsh nearby, you can be pretty sure that most of that water that might have made of your way into your house, into your streets, is being stored in the sphagnum moss that we have here. And now, coastal wetlands. Coastal wetlands, in almost all cases, will be your salt marshes. And these help us by basically acting as a buffer to a storm. So you see this layer here on the marsh, on the image to the right. You have what looks to be very, very thick mud with vegetation lying over a sand dune. That's kind of how salt marshes are formed. So this super thick vegetative barrier breaks up a lot of the force that waves would normally take out on the beach or by the roads or by infrastructure. So having a marsh alongside a highway, great way to prevent it from being eroded away by storms and rain. And lastly, carbon storage. So going back to these super thick vegetation barriers, the reason they're so dark and thick, this is not just ground or earth or mud that these are made of. This is organic material that's been compressed and compressed and compressed and compressed and compressed over a super long period of time. So this is all organic material. And as you guys know, organic material, lots of carbon. So as the salt marshes are allowed to be, to go undisturbed, as long as we don't fill them in, they're going to sequester, meaning they're going to store a lot of carbon inside of the marsh. Now, that's great for us, but it's another reason also not to destroy them. Not only do we want to not lose a carbon sink, we don't want to lose a source that the carbon goes in. If we start messing with our wetlands, if we start burning them, if we start filling them in, if we start to flood them, that's actually going to release the carbon that's been stored inside of them already. So not only are they a sink, if we don't conserve them and we don't manage them correctly, they become a carbon source. So super important to maintain that.
So unfortunately, wetlands are at risk. And if you look across the country, there's some pretty scary numbers of the percentage of wetlands that have been lost. And in New Brunswick alone, if you talk coastal marshes, our salt marshes, we have lost 80% of our coastal wetlands. And that is a scary number. But I'm very happy to say that in the province of New Brunswick, we do have a wetland policy which protects wetlands. So in this province, you cannot just go into a wetland, fill it in, destroy it. You have to have permission from the government. It's actually not the government, it's the Technical Review Committee. And it's made up of a group of different people. And they make the decisions on whether or not the project, like say you wanted to build a highway, your project has to be kind of for the greater good, like it's for the benefit of the majority of the people, not just individuals. So there has to be a really good reason. Then if your project is approved, you have to compensate. So basically for every acre of wetland you hurt, you have to put 2 acres back onto the ground. So that's kind of how we protect the wetlands in this province. And in Atlantic Canada, PEI, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia all have wetland policies, and Newfoundland does not have one yet, but they are getting very close. They actually have one that's in legislature, and hopefully it'll get moved through eventually. So is there any questions on anything we've talked about so far? All right, so you guys, wetlands are a beautiful place. We had sent up some wetland exploration kits. We sent up dip nets, and you got a little marsh monster book, a magnifier, and your marsh monster ID sheet, your marsh world. We want you guys to go outside and explore wetlands. So use the tools that we gave you. And Pam, in a couple of weeks, are we gonna get the opportunity to go out, maybe?
We are hoping to be in the field for those students who aren't in Jacket River or Fun Day Middle School. Elsie Book Took in the middle of November. And who knows, we might come to an area near you in the future. But yeah, we hope to get out there in mid-November with Rex.
All right. With that, it is time to play a game to see how well you guys were paying attention. So this is where you need to get out your device and go to kahoot.it. And I'm going to stop screen sharing this and reshare the quiz page. There we go. All right, so I am going to press the play button and present. This is going to bring up a game code. Classic?
So, seeing as we have a limit to how many people we can have at the Kahoot at once, we're going to go on team mode, and each of your classrooms is going to be one person, essentially. So, if you are a teacher and you have a class, take some answers if you can.
So this is going to generate a game pin. So once, oh, there's the pin. That was really loud. Okay, so we are going to have a game pin there. Enter that in, and then you'll pick a team name. Are you guys hearing the music from the game or just me?
Just you
Just me?
right now. Yeah.
That's okay. We don't need the music from the game. And I'm still waiting for teams.
Okay.
Oh, we've got Noftel's clan and Tyrese. Tyrese, how do you say that?
Yeah, Tyrese.
Tyrese Sam.
Now we got Preston.
I think we're waiting for one more. Do we have 4 people? Oh, we've reached, yeah, we've reached our limit.
Well, I guess that's that.
I wonder if we go back. Oh no, we got more.
Oh, there we go.
Boggy Fen just joined. Awesome. That's a great name.
Yeah.
And Junior Tigers. All right, is that everybody? All right, let's start the game, Alex.
Yeah, I think it's
Oh, is our face is covering it? Yep, it is. All right, here we go, folks. Are you smarter than a Ducks Unlimited Canada 4th grader? So the first question, what percentage of the world's wetlands are located in Canada? You have 40%, 25%, 10%, and 5%. Go ahead and lock in your answers. Oh, we got 5 right answers. Good job.
nice.
That's everybody. Let's move on.
Good job.
Oh, Boggy Fen got that one.
Oh, quickest on the buzzer. So which of the following is not classified as a wetland? We have a swamp, freshwater marsh, saltwater marsh, and lake.
Oh, they were fast again. We can get
Yeah.
that up before we can get that
Okay,
red.
red.
Good job, guys. Let's see the points. Oh, Boggy Fen's holding a narrow lead.
By 2 points. Ooh.
Why are wetlands important? They are cool places. They filter our water, give us clean drinking water. They are home to thousands of species. Many are endangered. All of the above. Oh,
Oh, somebody didn't get it.
somebody didn't get it. We had 4 right answers. It was all of the above. Oh, we have a new leader
By 1 point, though.
by 1 point.
So which of these wetland species is considered at risk in New Brunswick? We have the great blue heron, eastern painted turtle, maritime ringlet, or the moose.
Oh, it's the ringlet. We had 2 right answers and 3 incorrect. We didn't even talk about
this one was a
eastern
trick
painted
question. It was the
turtles.
eastern wood turtle we talked about.
It was the wood turtle.
That was kind of mean.
Let's see how we did.
Oh, Nuftelsland, still number 1.
Yeah, they increased their lead a little bit there.
Yep.
All right, what is the wetland ecosystem that is highly acidic and has an accumulation of decomposed plants known as peat? A bog, a saltwater marsh, a swamp, or a freshwater marsh? Ooh, this one's tricky.
Yeah.
I don't know if we really identified this.
We haven't talked about them, but let's see what they know.
We kind of talked around it, but we didn't really come right out and say.
Yeah.
Oh, they
They're
all
good,
got
though.
it though.
They're good.
Woohoo! Yeah, it is the bog. Bogs have peat moss. Good job, guys.
Oh,
Oh,
rankings are
Knobtail's
the same.
clan is maintaining. What species of duck is this? Mallard, wood duck, green-headed duck, common eider. This is also another one testing your knowledge. Oh,
That was fast.
that was fast. They got that one, no problem.
All right.
No
Full score.
change. Yeah, no change. What critter is this? A leech, a caddisfly, a dragonfly nymph, a damselfly nymph. Oh, somebody's waffling. We've only got
Yep.
4 answers in. There we go. Yeah, we had 4 right. It was the caddisfly nymph. That's the one that makes the jewelry.
yes.
Oh, we have a
Tyrese
new leader.
sneaking in.
We have a new leader.
All right, 2 left. How do wetlands mitigate the effects of climate change? So they store carbon, they act as a sponge, lessening the effects of floods and droughts. Salt marshes protects our coasts from sea level rise, or all of the above. Awesome.
Wow. Good.
Let's see how we did. Oh, no change there. All right. I think this is the last one.
It is. So bonus question, what day is World Wetlands Day each year? February 2nd, March 22nd, October 23rd, or August 7th?
Oh, we had 2 people
Oh,
get it right. It is. It
nice.
is February 2nd is World Wetlands Day. Let's see our final standings.
Yay.
Oh, Nafta's clan, good job.
Yay.
Boggy
Boggy fan
fan.
number 2.
Woohoo.
The winner, Tyrese.
Tyrese. Good job, Tyrese.
Good job. And in 4th place, we had 8 English, and I missed the other one. It went away too quick. Good job, guys. So let's close out of all this. And I'm going to stop my screen share. So that is everything we had for you guys today. I hope you really enjoyed that. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask us.
Super duper. Any questions in the chat? I don't see right now. I am going to stop